most iconic moment in the entire Zelda saga was making you choose between a sword and another item that would have changed Link forever. This adventure with hidden details and Zelda Easter eggs is dangerous if you go alone, so join me by hitting the like button, subscribing to the channel, and turning on the notifications so you don't miss anything about Zelda and Nintendo. These are the 25 secrets of the Legend of Zelda for NES. There's a super rare version of the first The Legend of Zelda, but with Link from Zelda Breath of the Wild as a protagonist. This game is considered to be the spiritual successor of the first game, because Nintendo attempted to create a modernized version of The Legend of Zelda using it as a testing ground before embarking on what would become the massive open world of Breath of the Wild. If you look closely at Hyrule in the first The Legend of Zelda, you'll realize a disturbing truth. It was just a tiny part of the Hyrule that appeared in the rest of the series. Specifically, it corresponds to the Death Mountain area, where the Gorons live. This is known thanks to an official comparison between the map of Zelda A Link to the Past and that of the first The Legend of Zelda. Nintendo took 38 years to make Zelda the protagonist of her own game. Until then, Link starred in almost 100% of the Legend of Zelda games, with some exceptions like Hyrule Warriors. It wasn't until The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom that Zelda finally took the lead, becoming the main character in her own story for the first time ever. But Zelda has always been present from the beginning, and her name actually hides a secret in the first The Legend of Zelda. If you name your file Zelda, you'll start the game directly in the harder second quest mode, which changes the locations of several items and caves, features stronger enemies, and alters the dungeon layouts. The rupees, as you know them in Zelda games, aren't originally from Zelda. The currency of Hyrule comes from the NES game Clu Land, where they were gold bars and the main currency of the game. Nintendo took it as it was to bring it to The Legend of Zelda and make it Hyrule's currency, borrowing the name rupee from some Asian countries like Nepal or Sri Lanka. If you thought The Legend of Zelda was already a long title, you might be surprised to know that it was going to be even longer. Nintendo revealed that the first The Legend of Zelda was initially going to have the subtitle The Hyrule Fantasy, but it was ultimately discarded both because of its similarity to the Final Fantasy series and because of its length. In some hidden caves in the game, there's a moblin who says this phrase, "It's a secret to everybody." This strange English translation has become a meme over the years due to its lack of coherence, and even Nintendo itself has made fun of it by including similar phrases in future Zelda games that reference this moblin. For example, a Kikwi in Skyward Sword, a Hinox in A Link Between Worlds, or on a secret side in Triforce Heroes. It also appears in other games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but slightly modified so they don't sound too odd. Zelda games always stand out with slightly different colors from the usual ones. All the cartridges were gold, but in 1994, it was re-released as a classic version, and all its cartridges were changed to gray. Pols Voice's enemies could be killed in a very special way, but only in Japan. This secret has to do with the second controller of the Japanese Famicom, which had a microphone and could interact with the game in unique ways. By making noise or even blowing, the sound would pass into the game and could instantly kill all the Pols Voices. Interestingly, in Link's Awakening, Link could use the ocarina to make noise in rooms and also instantly kill all these rats. Did you know that The Legend of Zelda was about to have a remake on Game Boy? In fact, you might have actually played this game. The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons started out as a remake of the first game in the series, but due to connection problems with Oracle of Ages, it ended up becoming its own game. However, both the map and some bosses kept a great resemblance to the NES game. Being the first Zelda game in Nintendo's history doesn't mean it's the first game in its own history. The location of The Legend of Zelda in the series timeline is in between Triforce Heroes and The Adventure of Link, specifically in a timeline where the hero is defeated in Ocarina of Time, and everything goes very wrong. To save your game in The Legend of Zelda, you have to die. But there is a secret way to save the game using a second controller. You must have it connected and press up and A at the same time in the pause menu. This way, the game can enter the save screen as many times as you want. It's not the only NES game that hides a secret function when connecting a second controller. In Super Mario Bros. 2, you could instantly end Mario's life by pressing a similar combination. Here's a mind-blowing fact on which The Legend of Zelda is based. Link's name, which means Link, represented the connection between the past and the future. Although Zelda Ocarina of Time already had time travel, allowing Link to alternate between the present and the future with the Master Sword, this system was already planned in the first game. Miyamoto revealed that the Triforce wasn't a piece of gold, but an electronic chip from the future. This futuristic idea of Zelda has persisted even in modern installments like Zelda Breath of the Wild, which initially was going to feature aliens and UFOs. Zelda is Nintendo's most religious game in its entire history, to the point where Link actually carried a Bible in hand, killing goblins across Hyrule. The magic book wasn't used, but it's an undercover Bible with a giant cross on the cover. Link's shield that appears in the game's art also carries a huge Christian crucifix. Over time, the main shield became the Hylian shield, and the magic book reappeared in Hyrule Warriors in its more agnostic version. If you look at the dungeon maps in the second quest and put them together, you can spell out the word Zelda. Interestingly, the shapes of the game's maps fit together to form a rectangle, supposedly to save some space on the cartridge. However, it wasn't because of a lack of space that the second quest was created. It was basically because there was room for it. NES cartridges had a capacity of between 8 kilobytes up to 1 megabyte, and the main adventure of Zelda filled only half the cartridge, so they decided to duplicate it with some changes in the second quest. In Zelda, it is dangerous to go alone, so you have to take a sword to defend yourself. But your mind will be blown knowing that the sword wasn't the only item Link could take. Originally, the old man wasn't just going to give Link a sword, he could also take a boomerang. This information was revealed through a promotional video from a beta version of the game. The whistle has only 3 uses in the game, and in all of them, it makes this sound. It's the same little tune that played when Mario blew the warp whistle in Super Mario Bros. 3. And also, the beginning of the main theme from Zelda Ocarina of Time. Zelda was the first Nintendo game for NES that had an internal battery and RAM. This was necessary to save the game, and to avoid having to start from the beginning every single time, as was the case with games like Super Mario Bros. Although the early concepts for Zelda had a futuristic twist, Nintendo based it on European medieval battles, but it also had more modern inspirations like The Lord of the Rings or even Indiana Jones. However, the definitive inspiration came from another video game, Adventure for the Atari console, which was quite different, although it did look a bit similar. The third dungeon of The Legend of Zelda caused a lot of controversy outside of Japan because its shape was associated with the swastikas used during World War II in Germany. This led to rumors about possible Nazi influence in the creation of the game, but in reality, the dungeon was actually inspired by a manji, a Buddhist symbol that represents good fortune. Shigeru Miyamoto confessed that finishing Zelda was tough. It was being made simultaneously with Super Mario Bros., and when it was completed, part of the team had to be moved over to help with Zelda, mainly because programming the puzzles wasn't easy. In fact, Nintendo of America thought the game wouldn't work well because the mechanics were too complex, and American gamers wouldn't understand them. The Zora in the game had 2 different designs, one on NES and Famicom, and another on Famicom Disk System. The eyes and mouth didn't show up well in Famicom, so they had to add exaggerated eyeliner and lipstick to make this enemy stand out clearly against the water. If you think the Zelda theme song is iconic and wonderful, you should know it wasn't actually Nintendo's first choice for the game. Koji Kondo was going to make a version of Bolero as the game's main theme. But due to licensing issues, we ended up with a fantastic Zelda soundtrack that we all know and love. Japanese players were better at Zelda because they had an advantage. This glitch, exclusive to the Japanese version, allowed Link to get up to 16 hearts just by using the whistle in a specific place. So Japanese players weren't necessarily better, they were just cheating! There are still more dungeons to explore in these videos we're leaving here, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to make sure you don't miss anything about Nintendo. Thanks for watching, see you next time!